Well, the Democratic Party has become completely radical, as defined specifically by outside the mainstream of public opinion in a democracy. And immigration, that's exactly where they are. They're going to run on that, apparently. Some people think it's a good idea. Richard Goodstein does. He advised both of Hillary Clinton's presidential campaigns. Not being mean.
Not exactly.
Not being mean, but you did. Okay. So here's the point. The last guest, who I should note, is a sincere Democrat. He's not like some fake Democrat we brought on to make a point. He's a Democrat, but he said, look, every study, all by liberals, the Obama people, the McKinsey company, the consultants, all of them predict that like a huge percentage, 20%, say, of all of our blue-collar jobs are going away really soon. And yet we're importing people who, as he noted, are 60% without meaningful skills, poor people with no education. It doesn't mean they're bad people. What are they going to do? This is crazy.
Well, here are some industries where I think we're not going to be losing jobs so quickly. Hospitality.
Yes.
Construction. Agriculture. Landscaping. Retail, healthcare. I mean, this is where actually a lot of these undocumented immigrants are working. And you see what's happening in California, where these businesses are just absolutely caught in a vice. You got ICE on one hand, this California law on the other, basically saying not so fast, and they're losing employees and they're losing customers because people just don't really want to be around them.
No, I think most of the jobs you mentioned are designed to serve rich people. And so this policy itself is designed to make sure that everyone in your neighborhood gets cheap housekeepers. I get it. And so the ruling class is in favor of that. But I'm talking about actual jobs, one that you can support a family on. The old industrial jobs that are going away.
Right.
Why would you ever, in the face of that change, import people who are not prepared to compete in a digital, high-tech economy? Why would you do that?
So again, when you talk about importing people, in the Democrats...
Letting them come.
Okay, fine. Understand that when the Democrats were in control, we had a Gang of Eight bill that 14 Republicans, Orrin Hatch, Lamar Alexander, not lefties, supported. And we also had a net outflow of people from the U.S. to Mexico, right? That's when the Democrats were in charge, right? So this notion about open borders, that's a caricature. I get it. But it just happens not to comport with reality.
But they're literally arguing for open borders now. I mean, they're arguing for them now. Any border enforcement is not just wrong or against this country's economic interests, which is a real conversation which I'd be happy to have, but it's racist. You don't like people of a different color. They're basically describing this as a kind of race war. Is there a more divisive way to conduct politics than to say that kind of crap out loud when A, you know it's a lie, and B, you know it's going to leave permanent wounds?
Well, again, so Kamala Harris, who you quoted earlier, said, I'm a former prosecutor. If ICE wants to take out gang members and violent criminals and so forth, I'm there, because that's what they should be doing. If somebody's here that's undocumented, that's a violent criminal, get them out. That's what she's been saying. Look, as far as kind of targeting people by race, Jeff Sessions, I'm quite sure, went into California with his program and his lawsuit because the vice was tightening elsewhere in the Trump administration. Stormy Daniels, things weren't looking good for him personally and the administration generally, and it's a good way to kind of talk about the other.
Okay, but here's the truth.
It is.
Lawmakers can debate the wisdom of laws. Okay, that's what they do. Lawmakers should never encourage others to disregard laws, to flout the law, to undermine the law. Their job is to make laws, not encourage lawlessness.
Agreed.
So if Democrats don't like immigration laws, the ones they voted for in the Congress, why don't they work to change them rather than try to convince people that laws you don't like don't need to be obeyed, which is what they're doing now?
Well, what they're saying is that by law, the federal government actually cannot force a state to spend its resources. I mean, it's rich. Will you agree that you have people from Alabama who absolutely stiff-armed the Voting Rights Act, saying now we think the state should really be disempowered and should follow what Washington says.
Nobody is arguing this. We've been through this ground many times. States are not obligated to enforce federal law. They are prohibited from undermining it, from thwarting it, from obstructing it. And that's exactly what they're doing. You know it. It's illegal. They're doing it anyway. The lunatic mayor of Oakland, whose actual American citizens are dying because parts of Oakland are terrifying, rather than meet their needs, she's encouraging illegals to escape federal law enforcement. Well, that's obstructing the law.
She's advising them of their rights, which if there was some other right, if it was the Second Amendment, you'd say, thank God, Mayor.
They don't have rights. They're not American citizens.
Well, she's basically
and her concern should be for American citizens.
She was basically saying, do you not have to respond to a knock on the door? That's kind of a right that you've got.
cops are coming, run.
Right.
No snitching or whatever. She's another out-of-touch rich lady who doesn't understand that her obligations to Americans, not to foreigners.
What law enforcement people would tell you in Oakland and elsewhere in California is that to the extent that the immigrants feel beset upon by the police and by law enforcement, they're less likely to report domestic violence and other things because they just don't want to come forward.
Who cares? Okay,
well,
look, I'm not against, for the fifth, I'm actually for immigrants. I like them. But shouldn't lawmakers make their bottom line the well-being of citizens? Democrats are not doing that. If they don't win the House, I'm going to come on a show with you and gloat because their views are so out of the mainstream, they may not even win the House.
I don't think this is why, if they don't win the House, it's going to be. Because the fact of the matter is, if you look at the polls are no wall. No reduction in immigration, right? And yes, on Dreamers. That's what the polls actually say.
Okay. Well, we'll see.
Yeah.
You said the poll said that, I don't know, in 2016, and Donald Trump won.
Although he lost by 3 million votes.
We're all so
3 million
stupid.
short, but yeah, he won.
Thank you, Richard.
Sure.
California officials are trying to undermine, as we said, the laws that Congress passed. Oakland Mayor Libby Schaaf publicly warned of an impending ICE raid so that criminals could go into hiding and escape federal agents. Gubernatorial candidate Gavin Newsom, the former mayor of San Francisco, says that other local leaders should imitate her. Thomas Homan is acting director of ICE, and he joins us tonight. Mr. Director, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
So when you have the largest state in the country saying it's illegal for anyone who lives in that state, private citizens, to cooperate with you, a federal law enforcement agency, what does that do to the work you're trying to do in the state of California?
It makes our enforcement duties a lot more difficult in the state of California. Rather than taking custody of a criminal alien who's a public safety threat inside this security and the safety of a county jail,
right,
where we don't have access to weapons, now we are forced to go into neighborhoods, places of employment to locate these public safety threats on their turf, where they could have access to who knows what weapons. My biggest concern is one of my agents is going to knock on the door someday, and he's not going to go home that night. And that's very unfortunate because he should have been able to apprehend that person in the jail and not be forced to go on his turf to arrest him.
So this is making it more dangerous for federal immigration agents, but there's an irony here because the state of California, its politicians are claiming that you guys are going door to door and rousting the innocent, but you're saying that their policies are making you go door to door.
Yeah, look, let's be clear. The sanctuary city policies are forcing our hand, right? For decades, we've had access to county jails. We can take, someone's in the country illegally. They're sitting in a county jail, which means they're not a choir boy. Locals and state officials have made the decision to lock these people up. Well, and for decades, we went to the jail, identified them as illegal aliens, and take them into custody and remove them from the country, remove them from the community. But because they've limited our access to the jails, they don't share information with us, now we are forced to go into neighborhoods, which when the governor says he's protecting immigrant communities or the mayor says she's protecting immigrant communities, they're not. They're releasing criminal aliens back into the very communities they live and they victimize. So they're putting the immigrant communities at increased danger of crime, and they put the immigrant community at increased arrest by ICE, because when we go to a home to arrest that target, if we find others, they'll be arrested too. So they've actually put them in a bad position. And I'll add this. If they went to the immigrant community and asked the immigrant community, where would you rather have ICE, in a county jail or in your neighborhood, I guarantee they will tell you the county jail.
How does it make you feel to hear your agents described, in effect, as bigots, as a domestic Gestapo by Democrats in California?
It's an insult to the 20,000 American patriots that work for ICE. These are men and women that get up every day and strap a gun to their hip to defend this nation. They leave the safety and security of their home every day to protect their neighborhoods, to protect the community. And they're enforcing the law that Congress enacted. They're doing their job, they're sworn oath. So it's an insult to many fine men and women.
But you don't make the laws, Congress does. So how do you respond when Brian Fallon, who's a former spokesman for Hillary Clinton, says that Democrats ought to run on eliminating ICE?
If you look at the work ICE did, how many criminal aliens have we removed from these communities? How much safer have we made these communities? These politicians, they need to talk to the victims of alien crime. Talk to the parents that I talked to that lost children at the hands of criminal aliens. They need to talk to California, the California Sheriff's Association. The governor's sheriffs came out in support of ICE. They did a press release last night. If I could read just one sentence from their press release, it shows Governor Brown is wrong on this issue. This has come from his own sheriffs. We oppose SB 54. The bill is enacted still containing significant liabilities, which include restricting our communication with federal law enforcement about the release of wanted, undocumented criminals from our jails, including known gang members and other serious offenders. His own sheriffs agree with what ICE and DOJ say.
Shocking. Mr. Chairman, thank you.